Next up is going to be safety Malik Verdon. Now, this is a guy, if you're not, if you haven't been paying attention to Iowa State intently, and maybe you're not as um, necessarily tuned in, this is a guy you may not have heard of. Um, but Malik Verdon is a really interesting safety here. When healthy, which is going to be the entire key here. Um, he was arguably Iowa State's best safety and Iowa State's secondary was one of the best in the country. And when he's healthy, he is an exceptionally good run safety. He's very good he's very good on the edge, and stopping run, especially to the outside where Iowa State's defense is designed to spill run plays. When you get him in deep coverage, at times he can get burnt, but he's a guy that he's been a bit of a ball hawk for a good bit of his career. When he can jump routes in front of him, he is a ball hawk that can intercept passes pretty quickly. Like I said, in deep coverage, you don't he's not at his best when he has to cover like a speedy receiver, like a real burner, like on a post route or something like that, where he's got to really turn his hips and turn around the other direction. That's not where he's at his best. In the NFL, I think if you put him at like a nickel or something like that, where he can keep most things in front of him, I think he can be a really nice NFL prospect. However, as I mentioned, health is an issue with Malik Verdon. I think the reason he's coming out this year as opposed to waiting a year is because of the health issue. He has dealt with a number of injuries the last couple of years, especially in the form of shoulder and arm injuries. This year, he sat out the last 4 games of the regular season, 3 or 4 games of the regular season, and did not play at all in the Big 12 championship game. He did play in the Big 12 championship game, but he had this big, huge arm cast, and you could tell he was out there to support his guys. So you give him an extra mark on the checkbox there for being the consummate teammate that was out there just laying it all on the line for his guys to win a Big 12 championship. But you could tell he was severely limited by the severity of his arm injury. He couldn't really catch anything. He was playing with a club on his hand, just banged up all to hell. And he did not play at all in the Pop-Tart Bowl. I think it's one of those things where he just needed to just sit and rest and heal up. I don't think his injuries are like, where he's going to be severely hampered for his career. And I think if he can get healthy and stay healthy, I think he's going to be a really sneaky NFL prospect here at safety. But health is the entire key here because he's dealt with so many injuries for the last 2 or 3 years, really, where he just hasn't been able to stay on the field for more than 8-10 games a season. So if you can keep him healthy, when he's healthy, he's quick. He's a big body. He's like 6'3", 230, big bodied safety, good instincts, defending stuff in front of him. He takes good angles to the ball carrier. He hits hard, hits like a truck. I think he's a good enough athlete where if you can keep working on his technique, especially in his lower body, as far as turning his hips to turn, and chase a receiver down the field. I think if you can work on that technique thing, I think he can turn into just a really nice, well-rounded safety. I don't know if he's going to be a Pro Bowl or, I think it's a guy that is a couple technique adjustments away from being a really, really player, and especially if he can stay healthy. So we'll look at just a little bit of Malik Verdon's tape so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. But mostly he's projected kind of as an undrafted guy or, a day 3 type pick. Not a guy that's necessarily, you're not looking at him in the 3rd, 4th round. This is a guy you're going to take a flyer on in the late rounds because his tape is really good, but you're just a little bit worried about the injuries. So just to show you kind of a couple little sneak peeks of Malik Verdon here. You can see him defending in the run game. He's very good. I would say safeties in general are typically very good in the run game. Comes up, hits like a truck, didn't actually make the thing. Everybody blew the running back about 5-6 yards in the backfield. Making a nice play here, breaking out the pass over the middle of the field. His tape looks great. You just got to keep him healthy. He's a really nice body that can defend stuff. Look good ball instincts right there, picking off that deep pass down the field. Then you get here, making a nice play in the passing game here to wrap up that slot receiver. He's a nice player. You just got to keep him healthy. So Darien Porter is going to be our next one. This guy is maybe the most interesting prospect of the bunch. Not necessarily, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel are going to grade out, but as better prospects. But Darien Porter is the most interesting one. Darien Porter started his career at Iowa State as a receiver after coming out of Bettendorf as a 3-star guy. He held the record in the state of Iowa in high school for the 100-meter and 200-meter dash at six, and he's a 6'4" tall. Problem is he came out of high school at 6'4" at like 180 pounds. He's just a lanky stick, basically. Just not nearly physical enough to be able to handle the Big 12 at receiver. And then a couple years ago, they moved him back to corner, which I thought was very interesting because he is a 6'4" guy with track speed, with like high-end track speed, which as a platform for a body and an athlete, you love at corner. That's a massive 6'4" is a massive frame for a corner. And up to that point, he had been mostly playing special teams and he had been very, very good at it. So now you turn him in from a very effective special teams player into a corner. And to highlight just how good of a special teams player Darien Porter was, by the end of his career, he was the only player in college football to have blocked a punt 4 years in a row. He blocked a punt 4 years in a row, and then he also blocked a number of field goals this year as well. He's an exceptionally good special teams player, like a guy that is a good enough athlete and a good enough special teams player to justify drafting just as a gunner on special teams. The way the Patriots had, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but Patriots had a guy for a long time. He's basically a Hall of Fame special teams player. Slater, I think is his last name. And Darien Porter, even just as an athlete that can play on special teams, is draftable. This is a guy at 6'4" that I'm expecting. I would be kind of surprised if his 40 time was above 4.4. I would expect, even at his size, I think he'll run sub 4.4 in the 40. He's got track speed, and he's even a better athlete than he was in high school. His tape is really nice as a zone corner on the perimeter. I think that's where he's going to be at his best. In man, sometimes he, just because of his big frame, sometimes he has a little bit of trouble keeping up like on slot routes with smaller receivers just because he is such a big frame. But if he can stay on the perimeter and either sit in zone or just follow a guy on a go route, he is a big time prospect at the NFL level. And because I think he's going to sit nicely as a zone corner, the guy, we'll see what he's got planned for his defense, but I think a team that makes a ton of sense for Darien Porter is the Las Vegas Raiders, playing for Pete Carroll in Las Vegas. Because if you remember that the Seahawks Super Bowl teams where Pete Carroll really made his hay in Seattle was playing with that Legion of Boom defense, and they love to play corners with their zone. And if you look at a guy like Darien Porter, he is a slightly better athlete but a similar body to what Richard Sherman was coming out of Stanford. A zone corner with a really big, long zone corner that's kind of a ball hawk that can sit there and just lock down a side of the field. Darien Porter can be that kind of guy, and he can also play really high-end special teams. I think that's a guy that Pete Carroll would love to see. If you look at his projections, he's projected right now in the 3rd round. I could see him going anywhere in the 2nd and 4th. There actually is a first round projection to the Bills here. I'd be kind of surprised if he got there, but it was just, last week that prediction was made. So that's interesting. The Vikings and Packers taking him in the 1st round. God, there's a lot of first round projections for him. More than I even remembered. You get some stuff in the Vikings, Packers, Chiefs, Ravens there. Lots of round 2s and 3s, even some round 1 projections. So this is a guy that's going to go high. I think you're going to really start to hear his name a lot more after the combine. If he runs 4.36 at the combine at 6'4", you're going to see his name shoot right up the draft board. You're going to start seeing him. You're going to start seeing talk of him in the 1st round because he's still green at corner. He's only been there for a couple years, but his tape is really, really promising. And his frame and his athleticism are high, top end S tier frame and athleticism for that position. His main knock is that he's going to be, at the end of his rookie year, I believe he's going to be 25. So it's an interesting, balance there as far as what he looks like as a prospect. Look at that. Good closing speed and just a beautiful play. So it's an interesting, test as far as like his athletic prime versus where his skill prime is going to be, and seeing how quickly NFL teams believe that they can, turn him into a high end corner, really teach him more technique stuff. But gosh, the frame is there, the potential is there to be, and right here coming off the edge, bam. That frame, that speed off the edge is lethal in special team situations. He blocks punts. Look at Matt Campbell, he's fired up there. Um, Really high end potential here with Darien Porter. So do not be surprised if after the combine, if he runs really well, if he runs sub 4.4, do not be surprised to see him get some end of the first round, first part of second round projections, because I think he's going to fly up draft boards. The last guy here that we're going to talk about a little bit, not going to look at too much tape here because it's an offensive lineman, but Jalen Travis is, I would say, its last combine participant. He was a grad transfer, which doesn't necessarily mean a lot anymore in the instant transfer days of now. But Jalen Travis was a transfer from Princeton, came in and played left tackle for Iowa State. His tape is really nice. He's probably projects, I would guess, in the NFL, he probably projects as a big interior lineman, because his arms aren't quite elite left tackle type length, but he's got the size, 6'7", 340. He's got good feet. I think he's a technique adjustment from being one of those guys that's an undrafted lineman that just turns out to be just a 10, 12-year NFL guy that just sits on a roster and just does a good job for a long time. So this is a guy, like I said, I think he's probably an undrafted free agent. Could be a late day 3 pick, but keep an eye out for Jalen Travis. If he's not picked, he'll be one of the first guys picked up for a practice squad spot. So that's for Jalen Travis.